I could feel the chill of the December air before I even stepped out of the rideshare. The driver wished me a happy new year, but my stomach tightened instead of smiling. The Donovan house sat at the end of the cul-de-sac like a trophy lights, strung perfectly across the porch, silver balloons spelling out 2025 swaying in the wind. Inside laughter already leaked through the double-paned windows. Olivia's laughter. My sister's house always sounded like success. Tonight I was just the background noise to her celebration. She had sent me the invitation 2 weeks ago with a handwritten note that read, "Come if you're not too busy job hunting." I had laughed when I read it, but the truth was, I had rehearsed this night in my mind ever since. I didn't know yet that before the countdown hit midnight, every person in that glowing house would fall silent, my father would drop his glass, and my sister's perfect smile would finally break. The wind whipped my coat as I walked up the stone path. From outside, I could already hear Olivia's voice directing guests like a conductor, always in control, always admired. I paused before ringing the bell, taking in the sound of jazz music and glasses clinking. 3 years since I left my job at the marketing firm, 3 years since I traded spreadsheets for real people stories, and a paycheck that barely covered rent. To my family, that meant failure. To me, it had meant freedom. The door opened before I touched the bell. "Claire, you made it." Olivia stood framed in golden light, wearing a sequined dress that caught every glimmer. Her lipstick matched the champagne in her hand, sharp, sparkling, expensive. She leaned in for a kiss on the cheek that never quite landed. "Come in. Everyone's here already. I was just telling them you might show up this time." I stepped into warmth and noise. The smell of truffle oil, fresh pine, and the faint sweetness of champagne filled the air. People moved like a rehearsed dancemen in dark suits, women in jewel tones. Olivia thrived in moments like this, surrounded by admiration she mistook for affection. My eyes found our parents near the fireplace, Dad in his gray blazer gesturing proudly as he told some story. Mom radiant, as always, laughing politely beside him. When she saw me, her smile softened but didn't reach her eyes. "Claire," she said the syllables. Almost formal. "You found the place all right." "It's hard to miss a mansion with a Tesla in front," I said lightly. Olivia twirled her car keys around one finger. Still the same old sense of humor. Her tone was smooth, polished for the audience gathering behind her. A few of her colleagues from the PR firm leaned in curious. "Everyone, this is my sister Claire, the creative one. She's taking a little sabbatical." Laughter rippled soft and cruel. I smiled as if I didn't hear it. 3 years is a long sabbatical, one man murmured, and someone else added, "Must be nice." Mom busied herself rearranging hors d'oeuvre. Dad cleared his throat not to defend me but to change the subject. That was always his version of protection avoidance dressed as peacekeeping. I handed my coat to the butler and scanned the room. On the piano, a framed family photo caught my eye, Olivia in cap and gown. Dad's arm around her shoulders, Mom glowing with pride. My own graduation picture wasn't there. I remembered the excuse. "We ran out of space on the shelf." "Drink?" Olivia asked, already pouring. Her bangles chimed as she handed me a flute of champagne. "Don't look so nervous, little sister. It's just family." "Right," I said. "Family." The bubbles bit my tongue as I took a sip. Across the room I spotted Aunt Helen by the window. She raised her glass in a quiet hello, the only person in this house who had never laughed at me. I moved toward her, weaving through clusters of guests. "Still breathing?" she asked softly when I reached her. "Barely." Helen smiled, her gray eyes kind but sharp. "I see Olivia's still performing. She's winning awards for it," I said, my tone dry. Helen's gaze shifted to the rest of the room. "Let her shine. You don't need their spotlight, Claire. You've got your own light. You just don't flaunt it." "I'm fine," I lied. "I've learned how to disappear gracefully." Helen's lips curved into a sad smile. "The quiet ones always make the loudest noise when the time comes." Before I could answer, Mom's voice floated over the music. "Claire, come say hello to the Hendersons. You remember them, right? Olivia's boss and his wife. Of course. Another parade of introductions where I'd be the afterthought. I straightened my shoulders, walked over and shook hands with a man who already looked half bored. So Claire, he said, what are you doing these days? I run a non-profit startup, I replied evenly. We mentor single mothers and fund small businesses. Oh, his wife chirped, so you're like a volunteer? Something like that, I said, forcing a smile. Olivia's laugh sliced through the conversation. She's always had a big heart, she said. We're still waiting for her to find a big paycheck to match. The group chuckled. My throat tightened, but I kept my voice calm. Some investments take longer to pay off. That silenced them for a moment. Then Olivia clinked her glass against mine. Cheers to that, she said sweetly, her eyes daring me to react. I didn't. I turned away, focusing on the snowflakes melting on the window pane. Outside, the world looked peaceful, white, untouched. Inside, every word carried hidden edges. By 9 o'clock, the house was buzzing. The caterers refilled trays of shrimp cocktail, and the pianist switched to upbeat jazz. Guests took selfies near the glittering Happy New Year sign. I stayed mostly by the wall, answering polite questions about my career break, the same questions recycled through different mouths. Do you ever miss the corporate life? Are you planning to go back? What do you do all day? Each question carried the same meaning. You failed. I smiled through all of them, counting down the hours until midnight. Then, near the bar, I caught Olivia's reflection in the mirror. She was in her element, telling a story, her hands animated, people hanging on every word. The sight should have made me angry, but instead, I felt something else, clarity. I wasn't here to fight. I was here to witness, and something deep down told me this night would give me more than I had ever dared to ask for. Helen appeared beside me again, her voice low. You okay, honey? I'm fine, I said, and meant it this time. Good. Then keep watching. The night isn't over yet. She handed me another glass, this one filled with water. Stay sober, she whispered. You'll want to remember every second. I almost laughed. You make it sound like something's going to happen. Helen's smile was knowing. Something always does when truth's been waiting too long. Across the room, Dad raised his glass to Olivia's husband, bragging about her promotion. Mom beamed, adjusting the collar of his jacket while guests toasted to the Donovan legacy. I stood apart, feeling both invisible and oddly free. At 10 o'clock, a notification buzzed on my phone. I glanced down. It was a message from Hannah, my friend and editor at Forbes. It's scheduled for midnight. Happy New Year, game changer. My breath caught. The world spun just slightly, not from champagne but from the weight of timing. I looked up. Olivia was laughing again, radiant under the chandelier, unaware. I slipped the phone back into my purse and whispered to myself, midnight it is. Outside, the first fireworks cracked the night sky. Inside, the air shimmered with the kind of energy that comes before a storm. They still saw me as the quiet one. That was fine. The quiet ones, I thought, always have the best timing. The living room glowed like a magazine, spread soft lights, polished silver crystal glasses, catching the reflection of the chandelier. Everywhere I looked, perfection was staged and rehearsed. Olivia floated through it like a hostess who had been born for applause. Every movement of hers was deliberate, the laugh at the right pitch, the tilt of her head, the perfect brush of a hand on someone's arm. I wondered if she even noticed how everyone's smiles bent toward her, like flowers turning to sunlight. Claire, come over here, she called across the room, waving me closer. A small crowd of her friends had gathered near the bar, the kind of people who wore confidence like designer perfume. You remember Melissa, don't you? She runs the agency's New York branch now. And that's Andrew, he just made partner at Hightower Consulting. I shook hands, exchanged the polite smiles expected of me. Nice to meet you. Andrew raised an eyebrow. Oh, you're the sister Olivia told us about, the creative one who took time off to find herself, right? Olivia laughed before I could answer. Still finding, I think. She's basically on a permanent sabbatical. Laughter rolled through the group. I lifted my glass to my lips, hiding my expression behind the rim. Guess I'm thorough, I said lightly. Someone clinked their glass against Olivia's. You should write a book about how to stay on vacation for 3 years. More laughter. Olivia's smile widened, triumphant. Across the room, Dad was bragging to a neighbor about Olivia's latest campaign. She's always had that drive, he said, pride swelling in his voice. Can't sit still when there's success to chase. Mom added, just like her father. She turned, spotted me. Claire, sweetheart, did you try the crab puffs? They're from that new place downtown. Olivia's assistant handled the catering so efficient. I nodded. They're great. Mom smiled, relieved I'd said the right thing, then turned away again. I felt like an extra in a play I already knew by heart, The Dutiful Daughter, who didn't quite fit the script. The walls hummed with small talk glasses, chimed someone near the piano, started a jazz tune. My sister's voice carried above it, all bright and certain. I escaped to the corner near the French doors. From there, I could watch without being seen. The night outside was calm. Flakes of snow fell slow and steady, clinging to the patio lights. Inside, everything sparkled too brightly, the air thick with the kind of warmth that came from expensive wine and shallow conversation. Aunt Helen appeared beside me, her glass of red in hand. They haven't changed, she murmured. Neither have I, apparently, I said. She gave me a sideways smile. That's not true. You learned how to stand still in a room full of people who think movement means progress. I laughed quietly. You always make things sound like poetry. Age will do that to you, she said. Then, softer, how's your work, dear? Good. Busy. We just launched a new mentorship program for single mothers. It's small, but it's working. Helen's eyes softened. That's real success, Claire. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Before I could respond, Olivia's voice cut across the room again. Claire's heads turned. She waved me back toward the crowd. Come here a sec, we're talking about resolutions for next year. You must have one. I hesitated, but all eyes were on me. I crossed the room slowly. Mine, Olivia said, flipping her hair back, is to expand the firm's presence in LA and finally take that villa in Cabo for spring break. Her friends clapped as if she'd just announced world peace. Andrew, she asked. I'm aiming for a second Tesla, he said, grinning. Melissa, pay off the beach house. Oh, and maybe fall in love, but only if he has a portfolio. Everyone laughed. Then Olivia turned to me, eyes gleaming. And you, Claire? What's your big plan for the new year? I met her gaze steady. To keep doing what I've been doing. She tilted her head. And what exactly is that? Helping women start small businesses, coaching them to be independent. Olivia's smile was sweet poison. Oh, so, volunteer work. Not exactly. We're building self-sustaining income programs, grants, training, partnerships. Her laughter sliced through my words. I love that. She always talks like she's pitching a TED Talk. The crowd chuckled. Someone whispered, she should be on a podcast. I swallowed my throat tight. Helen's gaze from across the room grounded me. I smiled calm. It's not glamorous, I said, but it's honest. Olivia lifted her champagne. Well, cheers to that. Maybe next year you'll make the Forbes kindness list. The words landed soft but sharp. Even the guests who laughed did it nervously, sensing the cruelty underneath. I just raised my glass. Maybe I will. Her smile faltered for half a second, then recovered. The pianist shifted to an upbeat tune. Conversations resumed. I turned away, exhaling slowly. The night felt longer than it should have. In the dining area, Dad told a story about Olivia's college scholarship. Mom chimed in with how she never worried about her eldest. I wondered if they even noticed how their stories always began and ended with her name. I moved toward the kitchen, needing air. A server brushed past, carrying a tray of champagne flutes. I caught my reflection in the window, calm, composed, a woman playing invisible. The door behind me opened. Ryan stepped in, shaking off the snow from his jacket. Claire, I blinked. Ryan, I didn't know you were invited. Neither did I. My firm works with Olivia's agency sometimes. He gave me a small grin. I saw your name on the guest list and figured the night might be worth it. His voice was low kind. The familiar steadiness in it unclenched something in me. How's the startup, he asked. It's alive, growing. I read about your program online. Impressive stuff. You should talk about it more. I smiled faintly. People here aren't interested in the kind of success that can't be framed. He studied me. Maybe you're wrong. Maybe they just haven't seen the right frame yet. Before I could reply, Olivia's laughter pierced the air again. Ryan, there you are. She swept across the room, placing a manicured hand on his arm. We were just talking about you. You two worked together ages ago, right? Ryan nodded. Yeah. Back when Claire still made everyone in the office look bad by being better prepared. Olivia's laugh sounded brittle. Well, she's had plenty of time to rest since then. Ryan's jaw tightened. Guess rest looks good on her. Olivia blinked, not sure how to read that. She smiled too brightly and drifted off to charm someone else. Ryan glanced at me. Same Olivia, same show, I said. He laughed quietly. Don't worry. Every performance ends. I'm not worried, I said, though part of me still was. The night stretched on. Glasses refilled, laughter rose and fell. I found myself beside the piano again, pretending to admire the decor. Helen joined me, slipping her arm through mine. You held your ground, she whispered. I didn't do anything. Exactly, she said. Sometimes silence is louder than any speech. I smiled faintly. Then this family must hear me screaming. She chuckled softly. Just wait. Midnight has a way of exposing truth. I looked around the room. Olivia was showing someone a photo of her latest campaign on her phone, laughter echoing. Dad watched her like she was a headline he'd written himself. Mom glowed with secondhand pride. I sipped water now, not champagne. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. A short message from Hannah. We're live at midnight sharp. Brace yourself. I stared at the words, heartbeat steady. The timing was poetic. The piano tune faded, replaced by an upbeat pop song. Guests cheered, glasses clinked again. Olivia raised her arms, calling out 1/2 an hour till midnight. Everyone ready for the countdown, cheers erupted. Helen leaned close. That's your cue, my dear. Keep your calm. The truth always loves good timing. I nodded, a slow smile forming. Outside, snow kept falling under the golden porch lights. Inside, laughter filled every corner, bright, oblivious, temporary. They thought they were watching a party. They didn't realize they were part of a story already rewriting itself. They laughed now. Midnight would laugh last. Everyone, glasses up, Olivia's voice rose above the chatter, bright and commanding. The pianist stopped mid-note as she climbed onto the small step near the fireplace, glittering under the chandelier like a host on live television. It's almost time to toast to another amazing year. But first I want to celebrate all the hard work we've done and the people who've been part of it. Her eyes swept the room. They didn't stop on me, not yet. The guests gathered closer, glasses, raised their faces flushed from champagne and admiration. Dad smiled proudly from the corner. Mom clapped as if Olivia had just won an award. To family, Olivia declared, and to success that keeps us moving forward. The room echoed, to success. The word bounced off the crystal and silver, ringing in my ears like a verdict. Then Olivia turned to me, that perfect tilt of her head returning. And to my sister Claire, she added her tone, syrupy sweet, the kind of sweetness that stuck in your throat. The dreamer in the family, still figuring out her path. May next year finally bring her something worth celebrating. A few people laughed, unsure if it was safe to. I placed my glass down carefully, the stem cool against my fingers. That's kind of you, I said softly. I've been celebrating plenty, just not in this room. Her smile flickered, but she recovered quickly. You've always been good at finding silver linings. I just look for what's real, I said. For a moment, the silence hummed like static. Then someone broke it with forced laughter. The music resumed. Olivia grinned again, triumphant, as if she had won some invisible point in a game only she understood. I felt Helen's gaze from across the room, calm and steady like an anchor. Olivia wasn't done. She never was. You should have seen her in college, she said to the crowd, voice dripping nostalgia. Always volunteering, always chasing big causes. I told her once she'd make a great nun if she could handle vows of poverty. The laughter this time was louder. I took another sip of champagne, forcing myself to breathe slowly. At least vows come with purpose, I murmured. Olivia blinked. What's that nothing, I said. Just happy you remember me at all. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but before she could reply, someone called her name from across the room. The conversation drifted elsewhere, but the tension stayed like perfume you couldn't wash off. I moved toward the kitchen, pretending to refill my glass. My reflection in the dark window looked like a stranger, composed, indifferent, untouchable. 3 years of practice had taught me how to wear calm like armor. Behind me, Mom's voice floated from the dining room. Olivia, that toast was lovely. You always know how to entertain. She really does, Dad added. That stage presence, your clients must adore it. And Claire, Mom asked, her tone lighter, obligatory. You've been busy too, I turned, half expecting pity, half ready for it. Busy enough, I said. We just launched a new program last month. Oh, that's wonderful, Mom said brightly, though she already looked away. It's so nice you have something to keep you occupied, as if my life were a waiting room. Before the sting could settle, a warm voice interrupted. I read about your center, said Ryan, stepping closer. The partnership with the community college. That's big. I blinked. You did, yeah. A friend of mine volunteers there. She said the work's changing lives. Mom smiled, politely unsure what to do with the compliment that didn't belong to Olivia. That's nice. Olivia appeared beside us, her hand on Ryan's arm. You should hear about her projects, she said with exaggerated sweetness. She's basically running a charity from her kitchen table. So inspiring, right? Ryan looked at her, then at me. Yeah, inspiring that someone's doing something that matters. Olivia froze for half a second before laughing it off. Of course, everything matters if you believe it does, especially when it actually helps people, Ryan said. I wanted to stop him, to tell him it wasn't worth the argument, but part of me didn't. Excuse me, Olivia, said her voice too smooth, and turned away. Ryan exhaled. She's impossible. She's just Olivia, I said. She doesn't mean to be cruel. It's habit. He looked at me like he didn't believe it. You let her off too easy. I have to, I said quietly. It's the only way to survive this house. The band began playing something softer, Sinatra maybe. People paired off near the fireplace, slow dancing under the dim lights. I watched Dad sway with Mom, her laughter muffled against his shoulder. They looked so content, so certain that the world belonged to them. Helen appeared beside me again, her presence like a blanket thrown over cold air. You're holding yourself well, she said softly. I'm trying not to make a scene, I answered. Sometimes dignity is louder than outrage. I glanced toward Olivia. She stood at the center of the room again, basking in the glow of compliments, her diamond earrings catching the light. She looked untouchable, but her reflection in the glass behind her flickered every time the fireworks outside flashed red. I wondered if she knew how fragile her power looked from here. The chatter shifted as a waiter walked in carrying a new tray of champagne. Someone joked about making another toast. Olivia grabbed a flute and tapped the rim with her ring. The chatter died down. I want to add something to my earlier speech, she said, voice rising. You know, for the new year. I felt Helen stiffen beside me. Olivia smiled, eyes sweeping the room again. Success isn't just about titles or cars. It's about drive, commitment, ambition. Some of us have it. Some of us are still searching. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Right, Claire, she said brightly. I turned to face her fully this time. I'm not searching, Olivia. I found what I wanted a long time ago. Oh, she tilted her head, mocking curiosity. And what's that purpose? The word hung there, simple, steady. A few guests shifted, unsure whether to smile or stay quiet. Ryan's eyes met mine from across the room. He gave a small nod, proud. Olivia laughed lightly, waving her hand as if to dismiss the tension. You always did love your causes. Maybe one day Forbes will write about your, what is it called, rise and shine, rise and reclaim, I corrected. Right, she said. Catchy. I didn't reply. The silence stretched. Someone coughed. The pianist resumed playing, trying to drown the awkward air. Helen leaned close, whispering, She's losing the room. Keep still. I did. The less I moved, the more her words echoed. Dad raised his glass, desperate to redirect attention. Let's not get too serious, it's New Year's Eve. After all, Olivia smiled stiffly, relief flashing in her eyes. Exactly. No deep talks tonight, just fun. Laughter resumed, but thinner, now brittle. Helen gave my hand a quick squeeze. Well done. I didn't do anything I said. She smiled. You didn't have to. The truth always finds its moment. The clock on the mantel read 1115. The music picked up again, the noise returning, but the atmosphere had shifted. The laughter was forced now, the sparkle dimmer. Olivia stayed near her friends, drinking faster than before. I slipped toward the hallway, needing air. The quiet there was almost holy. From the doorway I could still see the party reflected in the glass wall, tiny, glittering false. My phone buzzed again. 15 minutes, Claire. It's live at midnight. I stared at the message, then looked up at my reflection. For the first time I saw someone steady, staring back. The kind of quiet that comes before a revelation. The kind of calm you only feel when the storm finally belongs to you. The hallway was dim, the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own heartbeat. I leaned against the wall, the laughter from the living room muffled behind me, like waves crashing from another world. My fingers were cold around the stem of my glass, condensation running down to my wrist. I had just started to breathe normally again when a soft voice broke through the silence. Thought I'd find you here. I turned. Aunt Helen stood in the doorway, her heels silent against the carpet, holding a cup of tea instead of champagne. Too noisy for me out there, she said, stepping inside. Too many people pretending they like each other. I let out a dry laugh. You've always had a way with honesty. It's the only thing that gets sharper with age. She handed me the cup. Chamomile. You looked like you needed grounding. I wrapped my hands around the warmth. Thanks. I was starting to think I'd forgotten how to breathe in that room. Helen lowered herself into the armchair by the window, sighing softly. Every family has one, the golden child, the peacekeeper, the ghost. I suppose you've had enough practice being the third. I used to think that if I stayed quiet long enough, they'd finally hear me. I stared down at the tea, the steam blurring my reflection. Turns out silence just makes it easier for them to talk over you. Helen studied me, her expression thoughtful. You remind me of myself at your age. I spent years trying to make everyone comfortable. Then one day I realized their comfort was costing me my own. I smiled faintly. I guess some things never change in this family. She laughed under her breath. Tell me, Claire, why do you still come to these things? Because if I don't, it just proves them right that I can't handle it. I looked up, meeting her eyes. And maybe because I keep hoping one year it'll be different. Helen leaned back, nodding slowly. Hope's a stubborn little thing, keeps us walking back into the fire. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The clock ticked steady and patient. Helen gestured toward the couch. Sit down. Tell me what you've really been doing these last 3 years. Not the polite version. I hesitated, then sat opposite her. It started small, I said. After I quit the firm, I volunteered at the community center in East Austin. They were struggling to keep their after-school program running. The mothers there, single working 2 jobs, kept asking if there was a way to earn extra income without leaving their kids alone. I helped one woman sell her homemade tamales online. She made $300 the first month. That's when I realized what I wanted to do. Helen's eyes lit up. You built the nonprofit from that piece by piece. We called it Rise and Reclaim. We started with 5 women. Now we have over 200. We help them start small businesses, food crafts, home repair, whatever they're good at. I write the grants myself, teach marketing workshops, coordinate donations. Helen's mouth curved into a proud smile. That's incredible, Claire. I shrugged. It doesn't sound incredible to them. They think it's a phase. They think what they can measure, she said gently. That's their limit, not yours. I looked out the window where flakes of snow drifted through the light. Sometimes I wonder if I made a mistake walking away from everything safe. Helen shook her head. You didn't walk away. You walked toward something else. Don't confuse direction with distance. I laughed softly. You really should write a book. I've lived enough chapters to fill one, she said, smiling. Her tone grew quieter. You know, when I was your age, your grandfather stopped speaking to me for 3 months after I turned down med school. I wanted to be a nurse, not a doctor. Said I was wasting my potential. I thought he'd never forgive me. Then one night, a patient thanked me for saving his daughter. I realized I didn't need his permission to feel proud. I watched her, letting her words sink in. You told me that story when I was 9, I said, after Mom made me apologize to Olivia for winning that art contest. Helen chuckled. And you still remember? I remember everything that ever made me feel small, I said quietly. It's funny how those memories stay sharper than the good ones. Helen leaned forward, her eyes kind but firm. Then sharpen something else, dear. Remember who you became because of them, not what they took from you. Her words pressed something open inside me. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. You always make things sound simple. It's not simple. It's survival. She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. You've already done the hard part, Claire. You chose yourself. We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the snow kept falling, thickening into a soft white sheet over the streetlights. Then Helen asked quietly, Do they know about Forbes? I hesitated. No. Hannah told me not to say anything until it went live. She said the cover reveal happens at midnight. Helen's smile deepened. So tonight, the whole room will see who you really are. I don't need them to see it, I said. I just need them to stop defining me by what I'm not. Helen nodded, satisfied. You're stronger than I ever was. I laughed softly. That's not true. Oh, it is, she said. I shouted when I wanted to be heard. You learned how to make silence do the shouting. The clock chimed again. 11:45. Helen stood smoothing her dress. They'll be calling for the countdown soon. Can't wait, I said dryly. She chuckled. You don't have to. Time moves whether we're ready or not. At the doorway, she paused, looking back. When they ask you for a toast, don't hide. Let them see you stand in your truth. It'll do more than any speech ever could. Are you sure they're ready for that? Doesn't matter, she said. Truth doesn't wait for permission. I smiled. You sound like a philosopher. Just an old woman who's watched too many people mistake applause for love. She winked and left the room. I sat there for a moment longer, holding the cup between my hands. The tea had gone cold. I stood, walked to the window, and watched my reflection blur against the falling snow. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear Olivia's laughter again, bright and hollow. My phone buzzed on the table. 15 minutes till reveal, Hannah had written. Ready, I typed back, ready enough. My pulse was steady, but my mind raced. The magazine would go live online first, then social media, then print. I imagined their faces when they saw it, the same faces that had laughed when I quit, that had whispered about my impulsiveness. It wasn't revenge I wanted. It was release. I set the cup down and straightened my dress. In the mirror, I almost didn't recognize myself. The girl who used to shrink in family photos was gone. The woman staring back looked composed, unafraid. A soft knock sounded on the door. Claire. It was Dad. I hesitated before opening it. Hey. He looked uncomfortable, rubbing the back of his neck. Everything all right, I'm fine. He nodded slowly. Your sister? She means well, you know. Does she? She just doesn't know when to stop. It's her way of showing love. Mockery's a strange dialect of love, I said. He sighed. You girls are so different, but family's family. "You can't change blood." "No," I said softly, "but you can stop bleeding for it." He blinked, thrown off, then forced a smile. "Well, come on back. They're starting another round of champagne. I'll be there in a minute." When he left, I exhaled slowly. The silence settled again, heavy but clean like snow before dawn. I picked up my phone one last time and opened the Forbes preview link Hannah had sent earlier. There it was, the cover image. My face half turned toward the camera, the headline bold, "From Jobless to Game Changer, How Claire Donovan is Redefining Success." For a second I couldn't breathe. Then I smiled. Not pride, not vanity, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing the truth was finally out there. I closed the phone, slipped it into my purse, and whispered to the empty room. "All right, let's go." Downstairs laughter swelled again, bright and oblivious. The countdown had begun. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and walked toward the sound. The storm was ready. So was I. The room felt brighter than it should have. Maybe it was the chandelier, or maybe it was Olivia, glowing in gold sequins at the center of it all, her voice slicing through the noise like a perfectly sharpened blade. 5 minutes till midnight, she called, clinking her glass against someone else's. The crowd erupted into cheers, cameras flashing, everyone jockeying for selfies beside the balloon arch. I stood near the back, my phone buzzing in my purse like a heartbeat. The Forbes cover was scheduled to drop in less than 5 minutes. I could almost feel the shift in the air before it happened, like the pause between lightning and thunder. Olivia spotted me from across the room. "Claire, come here. Don't hide in the shadows. It's New Year's Eve, not a funeral." I forced a smile, weaving through the sea of sequins and cologne, until I stood beside her. Her arm looped around my shoulders, the gesture friendly enough to fool the audience, but tight enough to bruise. "Everyone, this is my little sister Claire, the idealist of the family, still figuring out where she fits in the world." Someone laughed politely. I met Olivia's eyes calm. "I figured it out a while ago." "Oh, really?" she said, tone light but sharp. "And what does our nonprofit hero have planned for the new year more?" "Good deeds." A few people chuckled. I shrugged. "Something like that." She raised her glass higher. "Then let's toast to my sister, proof that sometimes dreams are just expensive hobbies." The laughter was louder this time. I felt Helen's gaze from the corner, steady as a lighthouse beam cutting through fog. I lifted my glass, my voice quiet but clear. "And to my sister who's taught me that applause doesn't always mean admiration." The air snapped, tension humming like electricity. Olivia's smile wavered for half a second before she threw her head back and laughed. "Always the philosopher," she said. "You should really write greeting cards." The room moved again, laughter returning shallow and forced. I turned away, heart steady, but my hands trembling. Ryan appeared beside me, slipping a hand over mine discreetly. "You handled that perfectly," he murmured. "I'm tired of handling things," I said under my breath. "I want to stop surviving their jokes." He gave a soft nod. "Give it 5 minutes. Midnight's coming." I met his eyes. He knew. Helen must have told him. 3 minutes. The music shifted to something louder, faster. People counted down too early, shouting and laughing, clinking glasses. Olivia turned back toward the crowd, raising her champagne again. "To family, to success, to the ones who make us proud." Her eyes slid toward me. "And the ones who keep trying." Something in the room cracked, subtle like glass under too much pressure. The laughter didn't land the same way. Some of the guests exchanged glances, unsure whether to laugh or stay quiet. Mom's voice floated from the back, anxious and bright. "Let's all get ready. Everyone together for the countdown." I looked around the room. Every face glowed with the same mixture of champagne and pretense. They saw Olivia as perfect, ambitious, golden, unshakable. They saw me as the footnote. For years I had accepted that. Tonight I didn't have to. 2 minutes. Helen slipped to my side, her voice low. "Whatever happens, stay calm." I nodded. My pulse was steady. Olivia glanced at the clock. Almost time, she called. "Claire, you should make a wish. Maybe this year will be your year. She didn't mean it kindly. I smiled. Maybe it already is. 1 minute. Ryan's phone buzzed. He looked down then up at me, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. It's live! 30 seconds, Olivia shouted, holding her glass high. The crowd joined in, voices blending into a roar. 29, 28. I didn't count. I looked around instead, the glittering lights, the silver dresses, my father laughing too loudly, my mother pretending not to notice. For once, I wasn't angry. I was done fighting ghosts. 10, Olivia's voice rose above them all. 987. My phone buzzed again. Notifications flooded in, mentions, tags, alerts. The first one glowed brighter than the rest. Forbes, the game changer behind Rise and Reclaim. Claire Donovan's revolution for women in business. 6-5. I lifted my glass slowly. 4, Ryan whispered. Look. 3, 2, Happy New Year. The room exploded in cheers and confetti horns blaring, everyone hugging, champagne spilling onto the floor. And then, wait. A man near the bar squinted at his phone. Is that someone else? Shouted Holy Claire, that's you? Heads turned. The music faltered. One by one, screens lit up like fireflies. My name flashed across them all. The same headline. The same photo. My face smiling from the cover of Forbes. For a second, the room was silent, frozen mid-celebration. Olivia turned toward me, confusion knitting her brow. What? Is this? Helen's glass clinked softly as she set it down. It's called recognition, dear. The noise outside, the fireworks, the cheers kept going, but inside the Donovan house time stopped. Someone gasped. Oh my God, she's on the Forbes cover. Another voice. Wait, that's Claire. Olivia's phone slipped slightly in her hand. She stared at the screen, blinking hard. The photo was unmistakable, me standing outside the community center, surrounded by women holding their first business licenses. My father's voice broke through the quiet rough around the edges. Claire, I looked at him calm. Yeah, Dad, that's me. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes glistened not just with shock, but something else, pride and regret tangled together. When Olivia's voice came out small, unfamiliar. I didn't know. I know, I said softly. The silence that followed was louder than any laughter that had filled the house before. Someone near the piano whispered. She was just on the news last week helping those small business owners in Houston. My company shared the article. Another guest showed his screen to the others. Look, it's trending number Claire Donovan number Rise and Reclaim. Olivia stumbled back a half step, her smile flickering like a candle in wind. You never told us. I met her eyes. You never asked. The words landed like the final note of a song that had been waiting to resolve for years. Ryan moved closer, but I didn't need saving. I stood perfectly still, the air around me buzzing with the weight of realization. Mom whispered, Oh, Claire. Dad's hand dropped to his side. The champagne glass he'd been holding slipped shattering against the floor. The sound cracked through the silence. No one moved. Outside fireworks bloomed across the night sky, bright enough to paint the ceiling gold. Olivia lowered her phone. Her face, pale, eyes wide as the truth finally settled. The smile she'd worn all night drained from her lips. She started, but no words came. I stepped closer, just enough for her to hear me. You spent years telling me I was behind. Turns out I was just building something you couldn't see. Her throat worked as she swallowed. Claire, I said gently. Tonight's not for apologies. I looked around the room. Every guest's gaze was fixed on me now. The invisible girl at every family party had become the headline they couldn't look away from. Helen's eyes met mine, shining. There it is, she whispered. Olivia stared at me, her hand still trembling, her voice barely audible. I don't understand how. It's simple, I said. I stopped trying to prove my worth to people who needed me small to feel tall. The crowd stayed frozen, the sound of the fireworks seeping through the glass windows like distant applause. For the first time in my life, I didn't need to say another word. The silence spoke for me. The silence stretched long after the glass shattered. For a moment, even the fireworks outside seemed to hesitate, as though the world itself was holding its breath. The air smelled of champagne and ozone, that strange mix of celebration and shock. My father bent down slowly, gathering the shards in his bare hands, as if cleaning up could somehow undo what had just happened. No one spoke. The music had stopped. The only sound was the faint hiss of snow against the windows. Olivia was the first to move. She blinked once, twice, like someone waking from anesthesia. Her voice cracked on the first word. This is real." Ryan stepped forward before I could answer, his phone in his hand. "It's all over the internet. Forbes posted the cover 10 minutes ago. The story's trending #1. Helen gave a soft, knowing laugh. "Happy New Year indeed." Olivia's lips parted, her face draining of color. She began, but the rest of the sentence dissolved. Her hand trembled as she scrolled through her phone. "You're on Forbes," I met her, gaze calm. "Yes, but how?" "You never said I didn't think you'd listen," I said. The words landed heavy, final. Around us, the guests stood frozen, uncertain whether to stay or flee. Their faces flickered with the same confusion that used to live inside me: disbelief, envy, curiosity. Mom pressed a hand to her chest. "Oh my God, Claire, you didn't tell us." I exhaled slowly. "You never asked." The phrase echoed again, the same one I'd said minutes earlier, but now it seemed to hang in the air, heavier, truer. Dad straightened his voice rough. "You've been working on this all this time." "Yes." Olivia's eyes darted between us. Her mascara smudged at the corners. "You mean all those years you said you were volunteering?" "I was building something," I said. "Something real." Helen stepped closer, resting a steady hand on my shoulder. "She wasn't volunteering, dear. She was leading." A ripple of whispers spread through the guests. Phones lit up like constellations, every screen showing the same image, my face on the cover, headline bold: "From Jobless to Game Changer, How Claire Donovan's Nonprofit is Transforming Women's Futures." One woman near the piano murmured, "She's incredible." Another whispered, "I had no idea." The words washed over me like background noise. I wasn't basking in pride. I was simply standing in truth. Olivia swayed slightly, her champagne glass still in her hand. "You should have told us," she said, voice trembling. "We would have—" What I interrupted gently. "Believed me." Her throat tightened. "Supported you." I smiled faintly. "You mocked me for 3 years, Olivia. Every time I showed up, you reminded me what I wasn't." I don't think support was on the menu. For the first time since I could remember, she had no retort. Dad stepped between us, his voice lower, now tired. "That's enough. Tonight isn't the place for this." Helen folded her arms. "No, Thomas. Tonight is exactly the place. The truth doesn't wait for convenience." Mom's voice wavered. "Helen, please." But Helen didn't stop. "You've all measured success by the same shallow yardstick for so long, you forgot what real accomplishment looks like. You raised a daughter who built something that changes lives, and you made her feel like a disappointment." The words cracked the room open. Olivia flinched. Dad looked away. Mom covered her mouth again, her eyes glossy. I wanted to stop Helen, but part of me couldn't. She wasn't saying anything cruel. She was simply saying what I had never dared to. "I didn't want to embarrass anyone," I said softly. "That's why I stayed quiet." Ryan looked at me, his voice steady. "You didn't embarrass them, Claire. You exposed the truth. There's a difference." Olivia turned toward him sharply. "You knew," he hesitated. "I found out recently. I thought it wasn't my story to tell." Her laugh was sharp and brittle. "Of course. You're all so noble," Olivia, Mom warned. But Olivia wasn't listening. She was unraveling. "All these years I thought you were struggling. I pitied you. I defended you when people said you'd wasted your degree. And the whole time you were what's secretly successful, I wasn't hiding it," I said. "I was just doing the work. Without telling your own family." I met her eyes. "Especially my family." Her face twisted, hurt, anger, humiliation until she looked like a stranger. "Don't do this here, Dad," said again, his voice heavy. "It's New Year's." Olivia turned on him. "Don't you see what she's done?" "She made us look like fools." "No," Helen said firmly. "She made you look in a mirror." The room was silent again. Even the fireworks outside had faded to a distant hum. Olivia blinked rapidly, her chest rising and falling too fast. "You don't understand," she said, her voice breaking. "You were supposed to be the one who needed saving Claire, not the one who succeeded." I finished. "I'm sorry that bothers you." Her shoulders sagged. "You think I'm jealous, I think you're lost," I said softly. "And you don't like that I found my way without asking for directions." Her jaw tightened. For a second I thought she might slap me. Instead, she turned, grabbed her purse, and stormed down the hall. The sound of her heels echoed like gunfire on marble. Mom called after her, "Olivia, wait." But she didn't stop. The front door slammed, the noise slicing through the stunned quiet. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Helen sighed, setting her glass down. "Well," she said, "truth has a way of breaking glass and opening doors." Ryan reached for my hand, squeezing gently. "You okay?" I nodded. "Better than I expected." Mom stepped forward slowly, her expression trembling between guilt and pride. "Claire," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you tell us? We should have known." "I tried," I said. "But every time I started, you asked about promotions or paychecks. You never asked if I was happy." She pressed a trembling hand to her lips. "Oh, honey." Dad's gaze was fixed on the shattered glass at his feet. "I should have been proud of you no matter what." Helen smiled sadly. "It's never too late to learn how." Outside, snow began falling again, slow, quiet, endless. Mom reached out and touched my arm. "I'm sorry," she said, "for everything we didn't see." I looked at her hand, then up at her. "You don't have to apologize. Just see me now." She nodded, tears glistening. Ryan let go of my hand, giving me space. The room began to move again, soft conversations, starting in low murmurs. Someone turned the music back on quietly this time. But the mood had changed. It wasn't celebration anymore, it was reflection. Helen slipped an arm through mine. "You handled that with grace," she murmured. "I don't feel graceful," I admitted. "You don't have to feel it," she said. "You just have to be it." I exhaled, feeling the adrenaline finally leave my body. "I should check on Olivia," I said. "She needs time," Helen replied. "Let her sit with the silence. It's louder than any lesson you could teach." Through the window, I could see her car's headlights cutting through the snow as she pulled out of the driveway. The taillights disappeared down the hill, swallowed by the dark. I turned back toward the room, toward my parents, the guests still whispering, and Helen's quiet, knowing eyes. The storm had passed, but the air was still charged. The night had split something open, and no one here would ever see the same way again. I glanced at the clock. It was 12:30. A new year had begun, and for the first time in my life, I felt exactly where I was meant to be. "Happy New Year," I whispered to myself, and the words finally felt true. The music had stopped again. What was left was a low hum of voices too soft to be called conversation, too heavy to be called peace. The floor still glistened from the spilled champagne where Dad's glass had shattered. I stared at it for a long time, the light catching on each shard like the remains of something sacred that couldn't be put back together. No one knew what to say. The room felt smaller, the air thinner. Olivia's absence echoed louder than her laughter ever had. Mom was still standing near the piano, one hand clutching her napkin, the other resting against her chest. Her lipstick had smudged her eyes distant. Dad had retreated to the fireplace, staring into the flames as if the right words might rise from the ashes. Aunt Helen sat beside me on the couch, calm as always. She held her glass loosely, turning it between her fingers. "You did what needed to be done," she said quietly. "I didn't do anything I said." "That's exactly why it worked," she replied. "Silence can carry its own kind of justice." Her words hung there soft but unshakable. Mom finally broke the quiet. "She shouldn't have left like that," she murmured. "It's freezing out there." She'll be fine, Dad said, though his voice lacked conviction. Helen glanced at them both. Sometimes people have to walk through the cold to remember what warmth feels like. I wasn't sure if she meant Olivia or me. Maybe both. I stood pacing slowly toward the window. Outside, snow drifted across the driveway, delicate and constant. The faint sound of fireworks still lingered in the distance, but the world beyond the glass looked soft, untouched. She hated me for that, I said finally, for being the one who didn't crumble. Helen looked up at me. She'll come to understand. Eventually the truth doesn't humiliate, it humbles. Dad let out a long breath. This family's had enough truth for one night. Maybe that's the problem, Helen said, her tone gentle but sharp. You've spent years avoiding it. He turned to her, his eyes tired. Helen, please, not tonight. Mom spoke before she could answer. He's right. We're exhausted. Her gaze shifted toward me. Claire, I know tonight wasn't easy for you either. I turned from the window. It was harder pretending all these years than standing here now. She flinched slightly as though the honesty stung. Helen rose and crossed to the bar, refilling her glass. Families are strange creatures, she said. They teach us how to love, but also how to doubt that we deserve it. The fire crackled softly, a sound that filled the gaps between words. Mom sank onto the couch, her shoulders trembling. I never meant to make you feel invisible, she said. I know, I replied, but that doesn't mean you didn't. Her eyes glistened. I just wanted you both to succeed. You wanted us to look like success, I said. Those are different things. She didn't argue. She just looked at me, her expression folding in on itself, guilt replacing pride. Helen set down her glass. Maybe this is the part where everyone stops talking about what they meant and starts learning to listen. Mom nodded faintly. You're right. She turned toward me again. Claire, can you forgive us? The question was so simple, but it cracked something deep inside me. I already did, I said. A long time ago. Dad spoke from the fireplace without turning around. Then why does it still hurt? Because forgiveness doesn't erase what happened, I said. It just lets us stop bleeding from it. Helen gave me a small, approving smile. You've always had a poet's heart. I'm just tired, I said quietly. Tired of feeling like the problem. She walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. You're not the problem, dear. You're the mirror. Behind us, Mom sniffed softly, dabbing her eyes with her napkin. The door creaked open. Olivia stood there, snowflakes melting in her hair, her mascara streaked but her posture straight. The cold followed her in like a ghost. Everyone turned. I shouldn't have left, she said. Her voice was rough, almost unrecognizable. I just needed a minute. Dad exhaled. Come sit down. She shook her head. No, I need to say something first. Her eyes found mine. I was cruel tonight. I said nothing. I've been cruel for a long time, she continued, and I told myself it was just teasing, that it was harmless, but it wasn't. Her voice cracked. It was easier to make you small than to admit I envied you. You were brave enough to walk away. I stayed because I was afraid to lose what people thought of me. The confession rippled through the room like a gust of wind. Mom whispered Olivia, but Olivia lifted a hand. Let me finish. She looked at me again. You built something that matters, and all I built was noise. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for it anyway. I walked toward her slowly. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, not broken, but human. I stopped a few feet away. You don't need my forgiveness, I said, softly. You just need to start forgiving yourself. Her breath hitched. I don't know how. You start by being honest, I said. And you already are. Her eyes welled up again, but this time the tears didn't feel like weakness. She stepped forward and hugged me awkwardly at first, then tighter. I felt the tremor in her shoulders, the apology she couldn't quite say. Mom began to cry quietly. Dad wiped his eyes when he thought no one was looking. Helen smiled faintly, her chin trembling just enough to betray her own emotion. When Olivia finally pulled back, she laughed through her tears. You must think I'm pathetic. No, I said. I think you're finally real. She nodded, exhaling shakily. Then maybe there's hope for me yet. There's always hope, Helen said. Even for stubborn Donovans. A soft laugh rippled through the room, the kind that carries relief. Olivia glanced at Dad. I'm sorry for embarrassing you. He shook his head. You didn't. We embarrassed ourselves. Mom reached for Olivia's hand. Come sit, sweetheart. Olivia hesitated, then crossed the room. She sat beside Mom, leaning her head on her shoulder like she used to when we were little. For the first time in years, the silence in our family felt gentle instead of sharp. Helen raised her glass one last time. To truth, she said. It may be cold, but it always burns clean. We clinked glasses quietly, no cheers, no applause, just acknowledgement. I looked around the room, the flickering firelight on my parents' faces, Olivia's head resting against Mom's shoulder, Helen smiling into her wine. The scene didn't look perfect, but it finally looked honest. Outside, the snow had slowed, flakes drifting lazily under the streetlights. Olivia looked up, her voice soft. Do you think we'll ever be okay again? I met her eyes. We already are, we just needed to see it. She nodded, wiping her face. Helen leaned back on the couch. I think that's enough drama for one New Year's. We laughed quietly together, the kind of laughter that didn't hurt anymore. The night stretched on, gentle and unhurried. The fire dimmed, the snow settled, and for the first time in forever, the Donovan house felt like a place I could breathe in. When I finally rose to leave, Mom stood and hugged me. I'm proud of you, she whispered. Truly. I smiled against her shoulder. That's all I ever wanted to hear. Olivia walked me to the door. She hesitated, then squeezed my hand. Thank you, she said. For what? For letting me fall apart without gloating. I smiled. It's not revenge if it ends with healing. She let out a shaky laugh. You always were the better one. No, I said. Just the quieter one. The cold air met me at the door, sharp but clean. I stepped outside and looked back once through the window. Inside, the lights were warm, the people softer. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was enough. And maybe enough was what peace was supposed to feel like. The morning after was quieter than I expected. Snow still blanketed the yard, and the world outside the Donovan house looked like someone had pressed pause on everything. Inside, the remnants of the party clung to the air, empty glasses, gold confetti, the faint smell of perfume and exhaustion. I stood by the kitchen window with a cup of coffee, watching the sunlight touch the icicles along the roof. It was the first dawn of the new year, and for once it didn't feel heavy. Behind me, the house stirred. I heard the low murmur of my mother's voice, then the sound of the kettle whistling. Olivia appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, her face pale and bare of makeup. For a moment, she just stood there, unsure if she was allowed to speak. Coffee's fresh, I said without turning. There's more in the pot. She crossed the room slowly, her steps cautious, as if approaching a wild animal that might bolt. She poured herself a cup, then leaned against the counter across from me. I didn't sleep much, she said. Me neither. The silence stretched between us, not cold anymore, just unfamiliar. I wanted to thank you, she said finally, for not humiliating me last night. I turned toward her. That was never my goal. She looked down into her cup, her fingers tight around it. I said awful things to you. Yes, I said softly. You did. Her eyes lifted to mine. I don't even know why. You've never done anything to deserve it. You wanted to win, I said. That's how we were raised, to think love was a competition. Her mouth trembled into something that wasn't quite a smile. And you finally won. I shook my head. No one won, Olivia. We just stopped playing. She swallowed hard. That's the problem. I don't know who I am without the game. Before I could answer, Mom entered the kitchen wearing her robe, her hair slightly mussed from sleep. She froze when she saw us, as if unsure whether peace was still possible. Morning, I said. She smiled weakly. Morning, sweetheart. Olivia. Morning, Olivia murmured. Mom glanced between us, then busied herself with the toaster, the safe choreography of normalcy. Breakfast, sure, I said. She nodded, grateful for the small word, and began cracking eggs into a pan. Olivia took a seat at the kitchen table. The light from the window fell across her face, making her look younger, almost like the sister I remembered from years ago before the walls between us hardened. "Mom," Olivia said quietly, "I owe you an apology too." Mom paused, spatula midair. "For what? For letting you think I was perfect." Mom blinked. "You didn't make us think that." "Yes, I did," Olivia said. "I fed off it. I let it define me. And when Claire didn't fit into that picture, I made her feel small so I could stay big." The sound of the eggs sizzling filled the silence that followed. Mom set the spatula down and turned. Her eyes shone. "Oh, sweetheart." Olivia shook her head. "Don't sweetheart me, Mom. I need you to hear me. I've been so obsessed with proving I was worth loving that I forgot how to love anyone else." Mom covered her mouth with her hand. "I never wanted that for you." "I know," Olivia whispered. "But it happened anyway." I looked away, giving them space. The sunlight hit the window panes, scattering tiny flecks of gold across the counter. After a long moment, Mom crossed to Olivia and wrapped her in her arms. "I'm proud of you," she said, her voice trembling. "Both of you. You're different, but you're both mine." Olivia's shoulders shook against her. "I'm sorry, Mom." "I know," Mom whispered. "Me too." I sipped my coffee, the lump in my throat rising like something uninvited. Helen appeared in the doorway, leaning on the frame, her smile soft but knowing. "Well, it looks like I can retire from family therapy," she said. We laughed, a quiet, fragile laugh, but real. Helen stepped into the kitchen, her silver hair gleaming in the morning light. "I told you truth was cold, but it burns clean." Mom smiled at her. "You were right as usual." "Of course I was," Helen said, taking a seat. "Now pass me a plate before I fade away from emotional labor." We all laughed again, louder this time. The tension finally cracked into something tender. Olivia looked at me. "Are we okay?" I nodded. "We're getting there." She nodded back, relief softening her face. "Good. Because I think I need you. Not as much as you think," I said gently. "But maybe that's a start." Helen lifted her coffee mug. "To new starts, then, and to the quiet kind of revenge, the kind that ends with forgiveness." We clinked mugs instead of glasses. The sound was softer, truer. After breakfast, I slipped outside for air. The snow crunched beneath my boots, crisp and clean. The sky had cleared, the sun turning everything to silver. From here, the house looked smaller, humbler. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney. I stood on the porch, letting the cold sting my cheeks. Ryan's car pulled into the driveway, tires whispering on the snow. He stepped out, bundled in a coat, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. "Morning, hero," he said, handing one to me. I smiled. "Morning. You didn't have to come. I wanted to make sure you survived the fallout." "I did," I said. "Barely." He studied me for a second. "You don't look like someone who barely made it. I feel like someone who finally stopped running." He nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "That's a good look on you." I took a sip of the coffee. "So what's next for you?" "For all of it," I said. "The story's out. Everyone's talking. I don't want this to turn into a circus." Ryan shrugged. "Then you stay exactly who you've been. Let the noise pass. People will move on. What stays is the work." "That's the plan," I said quietly. He leaned against the railing beside me. "You know the thing about karma is it doesn't always hit hard. Sometimes it just rearranges the balance." "Last night felt like both," I said, smiling faintly. He chuckled. "Fair." For a while we stood in silence, watching the sun melt the snow on the trees. "You going back to the city soon?" he asked. "Tomorrow," I said. "The team's waiting. We have 2 new programs launching this month." He nodded approvingly. "Back to saving the world. Something like that." He hesitated, then said, "You ever think maybe it's time to let someone save you too?" I turned to him. "Is that an offer?" He smiled, not denying it. "Just a thought." We both laughed, the sound carrying through the cold morning air. The front door opened behind us. Olivia stepped out, still in her blanket, her hair a mess, but her smile easy. "You two look like an ad for forgiveness," she called. I grinned. "You should try it. It's free." She laughed, tugging the blanket tighter around her. "Maybe I will." Helen's voice called from inside. "If anyone's planning a sequel to last night, I'm not staying for it." Ryan laughed. "I think that's our cue." Olivia raised her mug. "To peace," she said. I raised mine. "And to starting over." We stood there for a moment, the three of us watching the sunlight break through the clouds, soft and golden. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. But it was real. For the first time, our family didn't feel like a competition or a performance. It felt like a beginning. And as the snow melted slowly on the railing beside me, I realized that sometimes justice didn't arrive in storms. Sometimes it arrived as quiet as morning light, steady, warm, and enough to start again. The world woke up faster than I did. By the time I checked, my phone notifications had stacked like falling dominoes. Mentions, messages, interviews. The Forbes cover had done its job. My inbox was full of people I hadn't heard from in years, suddenly remembering my name. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, hair still damp from the shower, staring at the glowing screen. Every few seconds, another ping. "Congratulations, you're amazing. We'd love to feature you in our newsletter." It should have felt good. It didn't. The noise was too loud for what I wanted to be a quiet morning. I turned off the sound and set the phone face down on the quilt. Downstairs, the smell of toast and cinnamon drifted through the air. I found Helen already at the kitchen table reading the morning paper with her reading glasses halfway down her nose. "You're famous now," she said without looking up. Or at least the kind of famous that comes with email spam. Apparently, I said, pouring coffee. "It's a lot." She folded the paper, finally meeting my eyes. "It's the price of truth when it's shiny enough for headlines. People love a redemption arc." "I didn't plan an arc," I said. "I just wanted to build something real." Helen smiled. "And you did. That's the irony of quiet work. It's only invisible until the world decides it's worth clapping for." Mom entered the kitchen next, holding her phone like it was made of glass. "Claire," she said softly, "your picture's everywhere. Even the local news ran the story this morning." I nodded. "I saw." She hesitated before continuing. "Your father's been sitting on the porch for an hour. I think he's still trying to process everything." "Maybe I'll go talk to him," I said. When I stepped outside, the air was sharp and cold. The sky was a clear blue sunlight bouncing off the snow like scattered diamonds. Dad sat in his usual chair, wrapped in a thick sweater, staring at the yard without really seeing it. "Morning," I said. He didn't turn right away. "Morning." I took the seat beside him. For a while, we just listened to the distant sound of a plow scraping the street. Finally, he said, "You did all that," without saying a word. I smiled faintly. I said plenty. No one was listening. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I was proud of you last night, and ashamed of myself in the same breath." "You don't need to be." "Yes, I do," he said. "I raised you to believe that success was the same as stability, that a steady paycheck meant safety. I thought I was protecting you. But I see now I was teaching you fear." I looked down at my hands, the steam from my mug curling upward like smoke. "You taught me to work hard. That wasn't wrong. I just learned to work hard at something different." He nodded slowly. "I know. And I'm glad you did." For a moment, the silence between us felt peaceful. Then he cleared his throat. "Your mother and I. We talked after you went to bed. We realize we owe you more than just an apology. We owe you our faith." "I don't need that," I said. "I just need you to believe I'm okay." He smiled sadly. "That's the same thing." The screen door creaked open behind us. Olivia stepped out, her hair tied back, her eyes red but clear. "Can I sit?" Dad gestured to the empty chair. "Always." She sat down carefully, looking from him to me. I didn't mean to interrupt. "You didn't," I said. She pulled out her phone and placed it on the table screen, glowing. "I've been reading about Rise and Reclaim, about the women you've helped." I didn't know it was that big. "It wasn't," I said. "Not until recently. It's still growing." She nodded slowly. "I want to help. I raised an eyebrow. Help not to make myself feel better, she said quickly. I mean it. I have contacts media training fundraising experience. If you'd let me, I could use that to get more visibility for your programs. I studied her face. For once, she didn't look like she was performing. She looked stripped down, honest. I'll think about it, I said. That's all I'm asking. She smiled a little. I need to do something that isn't just about me. Dad smiled faintly. Looks like I raised two fighters after all. Olivia laughed softly. You raised one fighter and one marketer. Maybe that's a decent mix. We all chuckled. The sound felt easy for the first time in years. After breakfast, I packed my bag. The house buzzed with soft conversation, Mom on the phone with relatives, Helen humming as she watered the plants, Olivia tapping away at her laptop. When I zipped the suitcase, Mom appeared in the doorway. Leaving already, I have to, I said. The center's waiting. We have a meeting about expanding to Houston. She nodded, though her smile faltered. You'll come back. Of course. Maybe next time I'll bring the team. She laughed quietly. I'd like that. She walked over and straightened the collar of my coat like she used to when I was a kid. Drive safe, all right, I will. Dad appeared behind her holding a small brown envelope. Here, he said. I frowned. What's this? He pressed it into my hand. Just something your grandfather left behind. I found it last week. He used to write notes whenever he saw something he was proud of. I think you should have it. Inside was a faded piece of paper with his handwriting. Pride isn't what you feel when others notice you. It's what you feel when you notice yourself doing what's right. My throat tightened. Thank you, I whispered. He nodded, his eyes glistening. Helen met me at the door with a travel mug. Tea for the road, she said. Chamomile. Don't argue. I smiled. You really are magic. I prefer the term seasoned witch, she said, grinning. Now go remind the world what quiet strength looks like. Outside, the snow had begun to melt the air warmer than it should have been for January. I loaded my suitcase into the car. Olivia followed me to the driveway. I meant what I said, she told me. If you ever need help media PR damage control, call me. I will, I said. But only if you promise one thing. What? That you do something for yourself first. Something that doesn't need applause. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. Deal. We hugged, and this time it felt easy. As I pulled out of the driveway, they stood together at the door, Mom waving Dad's arm around her shoulders. Helen leaning against the railing, Olivia smiling faintly. For once, the house behind me didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like a beginning. The drive back to Austin was long but peaceful. Miles of snow-dusted highway stretched ahead, sunlight flashing through the trees. I turned on the radio halfway through the trip, and the announcer's voice filled the car. In national news this morning, local nonprofit founder Claire Donovan's story continues to inspire. After her surprise feature in Forbes, donations to Rise and Reclaim have tripled overnight. Communities across Texas are calling her work a quiet revolution. I smiled to myself. A quiet revolution. That sounded right. When I reached the city, I didn't go home first. I drove straight to the community center. The parking lot was already full, the building alive with movement. As soon as I stepped inside, Maria, one of the first women we'd helped, ran over and hugged me. You did it, she said. They're talking about you everywhere, I laughed, overwhelmed. We did it, Maria, all of us. She stepped back, eyes shining. You gave us a reason to believe in ourselves again. I looked around at the crowded room, the laughter, the energy, the smell of coffee and hope. No, I said quietly. You gave me one. Ryan appeared in the doorway, a clipboard in hand. The media's calling again, he said. You want me to tell them you're too busy saving the world? Tell them I'm busy living in it, I said. He grinned. Good answer. I walked through the center, watching the women teaching classes, children drawing on the whiteboard, volunteers sorting donations. Every sound, every face felt like home. As the afternoon sun poured through the windows, I paused by the mural we'd painted last year, a rising phoenix in shades of red and gold. Someone had added a new line beneath it in fresh paint, Rise quietly. Change everything. I traced the letters with my fingertips and smiled. The noise outside could fade, the world could scroll past, but this was what would last, and for the first time I didn't need anyone to see it. I already knew it was enough. The center smelled like coffee and fresh paint. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, bouncing off the mural on the far wall, the phoenix that had become our emblem. By the time I arrived that morning, the space was already alive. Women moved between tables carrying folders, notebooks, laptops. Laughter mixed with the clicking of keyboards. It was everything I had once dreamed of and never believed I would see. Claire Maria called, waving from the back. She was wearing an apron dusted with flour, her cheeks flushed with pride. The new batch of women from the East Side program just got here. You have to meet them. I followed her into the classroom where 5 women sat in a semicircle, notebooks, open eyes, bright and nervous. They reminded me of how it all began, just a handful of mothers around a borrowed table trying to make something out of scraps and hope. Welcome, I said, smiling. This place started with a single tamale recipe and a second-hand printer. Now look at it. You're not students here. You're builders. This is yours too. They nodded, the weight of possibility dawning slowly across their faces. Maria grinned. You always make them believe they can do anything. I looked around at the bright faces, the growing shelves of handmade products, the whiteboard filled with business plans. Because they can, I said. Later that morning, I met with the staff in the conference room, our biggest yet, with a long oak table donated by a local carpentry class we'd helped fund. Ryan stood by the projector flipping through slides about new partnerships. 2 corporations want to sponsor next quarter's initiative, he said, and there's a grant proposal from the city waiting for your approval. That's great, I said, though part of me hesitated. What's the catch? Ryan smirked. Always suspicious. Always careful, I corrected. What do they want in return? He sighed. Brand exposure. They want their logos on all marketing materials. Empowered by Collins and Rowe. That sort of thing. I felt my jaw tighten. We're not a billboard, Ryan nodded. I told them that, but their funding would cover 2 new mentorship programs. Around the table, the younger staff exchanged uncertain looks. One spoke up. It could help us grow faster. More visibility means more donors. I leaned back thinking. The same argument I'd heard 100 times in the corporate world. Visibility, efficiency, growth, all synonyms for control. Here's the problem, I said. The minute our work becomes a marketing campaign, it stops being about the women we serve. The room went quiet. Ryan studied me for a moment, then smiled faintly. So we stick to who we are. Exactly. Maria, who had slipped into the meeting halfway through, nodded firmly. The only name that belongs on these walls is Rise and Reclaim. The group murmured in agreement, and I felt a quiet pride settle in my chest. It wasn't about rejection, it was about boundaries. When the meeting ended, I lingered at the window watching the city outside buzz with mid-morning life. Across the street, a food truck run by one of our first graduates had a line wrapped around the corner. I smiled. That was success. Not magazine covers or sponsorships, just women standing on their own 2 feet. Thinking too loud again, Ryan said behind me. I'm trying to remember what this felt like before everyone cared, I said. He handed me a folder. That's the price of doing something good, people notice. I looked up at him. And when they notice, they try to own it. He grinned. Not if you don't let them, I laughed softly. You make it sound simple. It's not, he said, his tone quiet, but neither was getting here. For a moment we just stood there, sunlight spilling across the floor between us. There was something in the silence, familiar, steady, almost tender. I didn't name it, I just let it be. By noon, the center was busier than ever. Volunteers carried boxes of donations. Kids ran through the hallways, their laughter echoing off the walls. Someone had set up a speaker playing soft music, and Maria was handing out muffins like a proud general feeding her troops. One of the reporters who had been trying to reach me appeared at the door. Miss Donovan, she asked. Can I have 5 minutes for an interview? I hesitated. You'll get a better story from them, I said, nodding toward the women at work. But people want your story, she insisted. They already have it, I said. Now it's time they hear everyone else's. The reporter looked uncertain but eventually smiled. You're not like other founders. That's the point, I said, and turned back to help a volunteer unload boxes. An hour later, as the crowd thinned, Maria handed me a small gift bag. Inside was a mug that read, "Not all heroes make noise." I laughed, touched. Who came up with this? She winked. The women voted. Said it fits you. I ran my fingers over the words, warmth blooming in my chest. When the day finally slowed, I walked out to the small courtyard behind the building. The winter light was softer now, the air cool and sweet. Ryan was there sitting on the bench with 2 mugs of coffee. I thought you could use this, he said, handing one to me. Thanks, I said, for everything today. He smiled. You're welcome. Though honestly, I think this place would run fine without me now. I shook my head. Maybe. But it runs better with you here. He tilted his head. Careful, that almost sounds like gratitude. I smirked. Don't get used to it. We sat in companionable silence for a while. After a moment, he said, There's something else. You've been invited to speak at the Global Women in Business Summit next month. They want you to headline the opening session. I blinked. You're kidding. Nope. Forbes recommended you. I groaned softly. I don't want to be a symbol. He chuckled. Too late. You already are. I took a sip of coffee, letting the steam warm my face. If I do it, it'll be on my terms. I'm not talking about fame or money. I'll talk about quiet work, invisible strength, the kind that doesn't fit on magazine covers. He nodded. Then that's exactly what they need to hear. I looked at him, sunlight catching the lines at the corners of his eyes. You always know how to make it sound like I'm not insane. I'd never say that, he said with a grin. You're just persistent. Persistent gets things done. Persistent changes the world, he said softly. For a moment, the hum of the city faded, and all I heard was the quiet rhythm of the wind, the laughter still echoing faintly from inside, and my own heartbeat steadying again. When the sky began to dim, I stood. Come on, I said. We have more to plan. Ryan followed, grabbing his coat. You mean you have more to plan? I'm just the guy making sure the world doesn't explode while you do it. I smiled as we walked back toward the building, the lights glowing through the windows like small fires of purpose. As I reached for the door, I paused. Inside, Maria was teaching someone how to bake, the scent of cinnamon spilling into the hallway. A child was coloring under one of the tables. The laughter, the warmth, the life, it was all still there. Do you ever miss the noise? Ryan asked quietly behind me. I looked back at him. No. I think the silence suits me. And with that, I stepped inside the door, closing gently behind us. The hum of the center wrapped around me again, steady, alive, endless. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had something to prove. I felt like I had finally arrived where I was meant to be. 2 weeks later, the invitation arrived again, this time printed on thick ivory cardstock, the kind that felt heavier than it should. The Global Women in Business Summit New York City keynote session confirmed. I turned it over in my hands, the gold lettering catching the light. My name looked foreign there, too formal, too polished. Claire Donovan, founder, rise and reclaim. Ryan leaned against the doorframe of my office, watching me. You going to do it? I said I might, I replied, still staring at the card. He crossed his arms. That was 2 weeks ago. Might doesn't fill a stage. I'm not afraid of stages, I said. I'm afraid of what people expect me to say on them. He smiled faintly. Then say something they don't expect. I set the card down on the desk. It's not just me anymore. There are faces behind this, people who trusted me. I don't want it to turn into a show. Ryan walked closer, resting his hands on the back of the chair opposite mine. It won't be. You've spent your life building the real thing. You can handle an hour of pretending the world gets it. I looked up at him, then at the wall of photos behind my desk. Women holding certificates. Children grinning in newly painted classrooms. Our team laughing in the courtyard with flour on their clothes. This was my truth. All right, I said finally, but I'm not doing makeup tutorials and slogans. If I go, it's going to be about work. About the unseen stuff that actually changes lives. Ryan grinned. That's the Claire Donovan speech I'd pay to hear. By the time we landed in New York, the city was already humming with the conference buzz banners, hanging on lampposts, posters with the summit logo plastered across digital screens. It felt surreal. I'd come here once years ago for a job interview that never led anywhere. Now my face was on a display outside the hotel. The night before my speech, I couldn't sleep. The city lights spilled across the hotel room like restless ghosts. I sat by the window watching the yellow cabs move below, tiny as toys. My phone buzzed once, a message from Olivia. Don't hold back tomorrow. The world needs to hear the part they never see. I smiled. The old Olivia would have sent a meme or a backhanded joke. This one sounded like she meant it. When morning came, the lobby was a sea of blazers' heels and name badges. A staff member led me backstage where cameras waited, red lights blinking. I could hear the muffled sound of applause from the session before mine. My palms were damp. Ryan handed me a small card. Notes, he said. I shook my head. No, I think I'll just talk. He smiled. That's always when you're best. The announcer's voice echoed from the stage. Please welcome our keynote speaker, Forbes featured founder of Rise and Reclaim, Claire Donovan. The applause was thunderous. I walked into the light, the stage warm beneath my feet. Rows of faces stared back, executives, journalists, cameras. I took a slow breath and smiled steady. Good morning, I began. When people see the words Forbes cover, they assume the story starts there. But mine started with a folding chair, a leaking ceiling, and a handful of women who refused to give up. A murmur rippled through the audience. I continued. When I quit my job, people called it impulsive. When I volunteered at a shelter, they called it a phase. And when I started a program no one believed would last, they called it charity. But here's what they never called it: work. The silence grew attentive, almost reverent. Work, I said, isn't glamorous. It's loading boxes, translating forms, sitting on the floor with someone who's lost everything, and reminding them they're not alone. It's invisible until someone like Forbes puts a spotlight on it. But the truth is, none of this was ever about me. It was about every woman who built something while people told her she couldn't. Applause erupted again, sharper this time. Cameras flashed. I paused, letting it wash over the room. When you see headlines about success, remember this. There's always someone behind it, unpaid and unseen, holding everything together. We celebrate the visible, but the invisible, that's where the revolution really lives. By the time I finished, half the room was on their feet. The applause felt different from the kind my brother used to get the hollow kind born from envy. This felt like recognition. Backstage, Ryan met me with a grin. You did it. I talked, I said. They listened. That's enough. You're trending again, he said, showing me his phone. Number, The Quiet Revolution. The tag was everywhere, clips from my speech, quotes, photos of the mural at the center. I stared at the screen, overwhelmed. That wasn't the plan. It never is, he said. You just keep telling the truth. The world's finally paying attention. The next day, articles flooded my inbox. Claire Donovan redefines success. From charity to changemaker, the woman behind the quiet revolution. It was dizzying. Back in Austin, the team greeted me with balloons and laughter. Maria handed me a bouquet of wildflowers. You're our celebrity now. I'm still your boss, I teased. Now get back to work. They laughed, and the sound filled the room like music. That evening, I called home. Mom answered, her voice bright. I saw you on TV. You were wonderful. Thanks, Mom. Your father made everyone at the club watch, she added proudly. He's been unbearable about it. I smiled. That's new. He said you remind him of your grandfather, she said softly. He'd be so proud, Claire. My chest tightened. That means more than you know. Before we hung up, she said, come home soon. We're planning a proper dinner. No surprises this time. I laughed. I'll hold you to that. After the call, I sat on the couch at the center, the building empty now, except for the faint hum of the heating system. The mural of the phoenix glowed under the low lights. I leaned back and closed my eyes, breathing in the quiet. Footsteps approached. Ryan appeared with 2 mugs of tea. "You're still here," he said. "I like it here," I replied. "It feels like the world slows down." He handed me a mug. "You know you could take a break. Let someone else carry it for a bit." "I'm not tired," I said. "You're allowed to be." I looked at him. "You ever think about what comes after this?" "When the headlines fade," he smiled. "They'll fade. But the work won't. That's the part that lasts." I nodded, letting his words sink in. He sat beside me. For a while, neither of us spoke. The sound of rain started tapping softly against the windows. "I think your grandfather was right," Ryan said finally. "Pride isn't what happens when people notice you. It's when you notice yourself doing what's right." I looked at him, startled. "How do you know that quote?" He grinned. "Your dad sent me a picture of it. Said it reminded him of you." I laughed softly. Of course he did. The rain grew steadier, the rhythm gentle, comforting. "Claire," Ryan said quietly, "you changed everything here. Not just the center, your family, your city. And somehow you still don't see it." I smiled faintly. "Maybe I don't have to. Maybe it's enough that it's seen." He nodded, eyes soft. "You're something else." "So I've been told," I said. We both laughed. Outside, the rain kept falling, washing the world clean. And as I sat there in the quiet hum of the place we'd built, I realized something simple but profound. The life I'd been defending all those years didn't need defending anymore. It spoke for itself in every voice that had found its strength because someone finally listened. The noise had faded, the spotlight had dimmed, but what remained was steady, unshakable, purpose. And for once I didn't feel like I was trying to prove anything. I was exactly where I belonged. The invitation to the family dinner came in a group text from Mom, no fanfare, no guilt, just a simple Sunday at 6. "Everyone, please." That alone was enough to make me suspicious. My family hadn't used the word please in months. When I arrived, the house looked almost unfamiliar. The string lights out front still glowed from Christmas, faint but warm. Inside, the living room smelled like roasted chicken and lemon pie. It was the kind of smell that could make you forget how much had been said here, and how much had been left unsaid. Mom met me at the door. "You're early," she said, smiling. Her voice trembled slightly, like she was afraid I'd turn around. "Old habits," I said. Traffic was light. She took my coat and hung it carefully. "You look wonderful, honey. You've been glowing lately." "That's just the exhaustion," I said with a small laugh. She smiled back, but it reached her eyes this time. "Dinner's almost ready. Your dad and Olivia are in the kitchen." The sound of clinking plates and soft conversation drifted down the hall. When I walked in, Dad was carving the chicken with military precision while Olivia stood beside him, arranging salads on plates. She looked up when she saw me. "Claire." Her tone was different now, tentative but genuine. "You came." "I said I would," I said, pulling out a chair. "You think I'd miss a free meal?" Dad chuckled, and the sound felt like a bridge being rebuilt. "You two finally sound like sisters again." Olivia rolled her eyes. "Give us 10 minutes, Dad." Mom carried in the pie, her face flushed from the oven's heat. "I think we've all had enough drama for one holiday, don't you?" I smiled. "I'll drink to that." Dinner was surprisingly easy. The conversation flowed soft, and ordinary work, updates, news from old neighbors, the weather. It was the kind of evening I used to dream about and never thought possible again. Every so often, Olivia met my eyes and smiled like we were sharing a secret only sisters could understand. When we finished, Mom poured coffee while Olivia cleared the dishes. Dad turned to me. "Your speech," he said. "We watched it again last week." "Oh God, please don't tell me you've memorized it," I teased. He smiled faintly. No. But I remember one part. You said, the invisible work is where the revolution lives. That stuck with me. I nodded. It's true. The big moments only matter because of what happens quietly before them. He looked thoughtful. I wish I'd understood that sooner. Mom joined in setting the coffee cups down. We both do. She hesitated. You know, after your grandfather passed, I found his old letters. He used to write to the paper sometimes about the small things he thought mattered. He believed stories could fix people. I smiled. Maybe that's where I got it. Maybe, she said softly. But you made it bigger. You made it real. The compliment caught me off guard. For years, every conversation with my mother had been a test to measurement. This wasn't. It was simple, and that made it more powerful. Olivia came back wiping her hands on a towel. Mom's right, she said. You didn't just build a program. You built a movement. I've been talking to my PR team about helping you launch a new campaign. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, she smiled. Nothing flashy, just awareness. Stories from the women themselves. I figured I owe the universe a little good PR karma. I laughed. You're serious. Dead serious, she said. I already talked to Ryan. Of course you did, I said, shaking my head. Dad chuckled. Looks like we've got a family business again. Just a different kind. Mom lifted her cup. To new beginnings. We raised our glasses. For once, it didn't feel forced. Later that night, after the table was cleared and the pie was half gone, I found myself on the back porch. The winter air was sharp, the sky clear. The old oak tree in the yard still had strings of gold lights tangled in its branches. They swayed gently in the breeze, flickering like the last remnants of Christmas. Olivia joined me, a blanket draped around her shoulders. Mom's probably crying over the dishes, she said softly. She does that when she's happy, I replied. She does that when she feels everything, Olivia said. I think we all do now. I looked at her. You've changed, she smiled. So have you. For a long moment we stood there in silence, just the sound of the wind and the faint hum of the heater from inside. I'm proud of you, Claire, she said quietly. And I'm proud of us. We survived, whatever that was. I laughed under my breath. It was a lot. Yeah, she said, but we're here. She leaned her head against my shoulder, and for the first time since we were kids, it didn't feel strange. Inside, the clock struck 9. Through the window, I saw Mom and Dad dancing slowly in the living room to some old jazz record. It was the kind of image that didn't belong to our family before, but somehow did now. Olivia whispered, You think we can keep this? I looked at her then, at the house glowing behind us. If we choose to, her eyes shimmered. Then I'm choosing it. We went back inside when the cold finally reached our bones. Mom handed me a box as I slipped on my coat. Before you go, she said, this was your grandfather's. He wanted it passed to whoever needed it most. Inside was a small pocket watch. The engraving on the back read, It's never too late to be who you're meant to be. I traced the words with my thumb. He really did believe in timing, I said. Mom smiled. And now so do I. I hugged her tight. Thank you, she whispered. We're proud of you, sweetheart. Don't ever doubt that again. I won't, I said, and meant it. Outside, my car was dusted with frost. I started the engine and let the heat roll through the vents. Olivia knocked on the window before I pulled out. I rolled it down and she grinned. Call me when you're home, okay? I will, I said. And Claire, yeah. She hesitated then, said Happy New Year. For real this time. I smiled. For real. The road was quiet as I drove away, the city lights fading into the horizon. For the first time there was no anger left, no bitterness humming in my chest. Only peace, the kind that settles in when you stop needing the world to understand you. At a red light, my phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. You made the news again. This time it's about the program's new scholarships. Proud of you, boss. I laughed softly and typed back. It's not just me anymore, it's all of us. The light turned green and I drove on. When I reached the city, the skyline shimmered under a blanket of stars. I passed the community center, its windows still lit silhouettes moving inside. The Phoenix mural gleamed faintly on the wall, catching the glow from the street lamps. I parked across the street and just sat there for a moment, staring at it. Rise quietly. Change everything. I smiled, whispering to myself. We did. And for anyone listening, anyone who's ever been mocked for dreaming too quietly, who's been called jobless, lost, or invisible, I wanted them to know this. The world's loudest victories often start in silence. If my story means anything, let it remind you that your worth isn't defined by who claps for you. It's defined by what you build when no one's watching. If you've ever been underestimated, keep going. Your moment will come, maybe not with applause, but with peace. And when it does, tell me about it. I'll be here listening. Because that's what this space is for our quiet revolutions, one story at a time. So if you've ever felt unseen, leave a comment, share your story, and don't forget to subscribe. You never know whose silence might turn into the next revolution.